Well, hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening from wherever you are in the world, from wherever you're joining us from. My name is Laura LeBur, and I'm a marine science educator here at the Smithsonian Marine Ecosystem Exhibit. Welcome back for our third Career Dives live conversations in marine science. This summer series is happening every Thursday, and it'll highlight the career tracks, interests, and projects of marine science professionals working with Smithsonian Marine Station and the Marine Ecosystems Exhibit. So while you're joining, please feel free to continue telling us where you're from in the chat. As everyone joins the webinar, I'd like to point out some of the features. So you can use the Q&A box to ask questions. At the bottom of your screen, it's two little speech bubbles. Please submit questions only in the chat, in the Q&A, excuse me. But you're welcome to use the chat anytime. It's going to be only visible to the panelists and our other educators. So please be patient with us. There may be a high influx of questions and we may not be able to get to all of them. If we don't answer your question live and you really want to know an answer, you're welcome to email us at smseducation@si.edu. And we'll mention that again at the end just in case we don't get a chance to get to your question. There's another educator in the background to keep track. So if you see a message on the chat box, it'll be coming from them. And I think Jashir has already shared a little bit about the features, so make sure to look out for those. And like I said, your comments are visible only to Smithsonian staff, so please keep them on topic and appropriate. Today's program is going to be about 40 minutes, and I think that's all the housekeeping items. So let me just say hello to a couple more people. Hey, Layla, I'm glad you guys are joining us. Hello, Ashley from Washington, D.C. Oh my gosh, we have so many people. All right, well, without further ado, let me introduce today's expert. It's Katie Skura, an aquarist at the Smithsonian Marine Ecosystems Exhibit. Hi, Katie.
Hello.
Katie has a super interesting career track, from falling in love with the ocean while growing up in Indiana to moving to Florida and pursuing her career in marine biology. She's participated in multiple research projects, scuba dove all over the world, especially in tropical waters, and has cared for thousands of organisms. Welcome, Katie.
Thanks for having me.
We're so happy to have you, and we're really happy to showcase your career in aquarium and in husbandry. So let's go back all the way to the beginning of your career. How did you get interested in marine science?
So my interest in marine science started from a very young age. My family was very nature-centered, so we were always spending a lot of time outside. And my mom and her family always had a love for the ocean, so it just kind of got passed down to me. My actual first few memories of the ocean are down in actually New Smyrna Beach. I had a relative there and we'd go visit them, and we were decorating palm trees after Thanksgiving right next to the ocean. They were on oceanfront property. So that was really the first time, like coming down here and visiting was the first time I had interaction with the ocean, and ever since I was kind of hooked. But what really hooked me was I was lucky enough in high school to be able to do a summer course in marine biology. So this course was, we got our dive certification. So I got open water dive certified after sophomore year in high school. And then we ended up spending a week in classrooms learning about marine biology and just getting our feet in the water, theoretically. And then we spent a week down in the Keys, diving and snorkeling all throughout the Keys, getting our feet wet, quite literally. So after that, I was kind of hooked. And not even kind of hooked, I was very hooked. And I was actually very lucky enough to do that 2 summers in a row. So the first year I was open water certified, and then the next year I was invited back to get an advanced level of certification because I expressed an extreme interest in the field. So I got my second level of certification, and then I was lucky enough that we had a really nice underwater housing camera and whole thing, so I was able to go down there and just take a whole bunch of pictures with that camera. So the photo of me up there, you can see me all the way on the left, that's our advanced open water certification class actually, and then some of these photos are some pictures that I've taken throughout the Keys. So there's a green moray eel there, and there's just the side of a reef wall. Some brain coral that we saw was really cool. And I love Christmas tree worms on reefs. I know they're not that great for coral, but they're fun to see. So And this is actually a nurse shark that swam right over the reef to our left and then just swam right in front of our group and just kept on going. And this was a barracuda that actually swam up right next to my head and just kept going, minding his own business. So it was kind of a shock to see it come out of your peripheral the first time down there, but I got a really cool picture out of it, so I'm not that mad. This is actually a basket star in the wild, and if you've been to our aquarium, you know that we have a couple basket stars in our Oculina reef, so it's cool to see a comparison, and now I actually get to take care of a couple of them. But yeah, that was really my beginnings. I really got hooked the first time I was able to dive. It's just a completely different world, and I was so curious being able to spend time down there and watch everything. And now working with our tanks, it's cool to see how we influence that and how we take care of that. So that's the beginning there.
That's really cool. And I think something that you didn't really mention, but is super, super interesting about you and your career is that sort of this thread of photography runs all the way through it. You're super passionate about taking incredible pictures, and I think you're going to share quite a few of them with us today. So I'm excited to see all your photos.
Yes.
So you transitioned into coming down to Florida. You got accepted into a program at Florida Institute of Technology, or FIT, for your undergrad. Can you tell us a little bit more about that experience?
Yeah, so that class I started school as a marine biology major, and then about halfway through, I knew there was kind of another aspect that I wanted to explore. I wanted to explore the conservation side of things. So I ended up adding a second major. So I graduated with a marine biology degree and a conservation biology and ecology degree.
Wow.
And the reason I really added that second major was because it required you to do a field course. And throughout all of my schooling prior to sophomore, junior year, I realized that all of the labs where we were out in the field doing hands-on type work was really what I was most interested in. So I wanted to get a feel for the field work. So luckily, the year I decided to add this major and take a field course, one of the options was going to the Galapagos Islands. So I got to go there and spend about, I think it was just shy of 2 weeks in the Galapagos Islands, traveling all over. So this is our group that went on. This was on one of our hikes. On this hike, I think this was the 14-mile round trip hike. So we hiked up the side of a volcano. We were on the edge of it. On the picture on the right there, you can see all that black is volcanic activity. And then we hiked a little bit around it, down the other side over an old lava field. There was a whole bunch of lava rocks everywhere. It was very hot. And then up another small mountain and had lunch there, and then turned around and just went back. And it was quite the hike. That field experience was really interesting. So it was very much a course. So it focused on doing marine and terrestrial transects. So this is actually, there's a lot of sea lions down there. They were very playful when I was taking pictures of them. So we got a few pictures of that there. But we did transects. So we'd lay down a measuring tape and we'd count on the marine side of things. It was looking at macroalgae cover compared to, actually I think it was just macroalgae cover and, fish, because we were looking at predation from top to bottom or bottom to top predation and effects on that stuff. So we did a whole bunch of marine transects, more sea lions because they're very photogenic. There's a sea turtle at one of our snorkel sites. This is a school of sardines that we swam through on a transect. So this is something that we had to estimate and count while we were doing that. So, a lot.
You guys put in the chat how many sardines you think you see in this picture.
Oh gosh. Yeah. Good luck guessing. I might actually take the time. Nope, never mind, can't count that out.
At least 3, 7,000, over 9,000. Welcome to marine science. This is how we count fish.
Yep, in cases like that, yeah, it's really difficult, but that's why it's called science. So here are a couple of pictures of me while we were out. You can see me taking pictures of things, of course. The cave was something that we got to climb, and we did a transect around that area. There's the picture of the marine iguana there. And in that top photo, you can see me doing our land transect. So when we were doing terrestrial transects, we were actually looking at cover of native versus invasive plant species on the islands. So we did these on, I believe, every island that we went to. It was just an incredible experience. I learned so much. It was very in-depth. And it really solidified the fact that I wanted to do field work in this field. So, and there's a picture of me smiling on a boat. That's pretty typical. And then actually, so I don't have many photos of my own from the experience in the Galapagos because my camera actually died at the very beginning of that trip. So more than half of the trip I was without a camera for anything. But that picture on the left or on the right there is actually my camera's last photo. So for reference. This was actually another hike that we did that was kind of surreal. So this was a freshwater lake that's on the very top of one of the islands there called El Junco. And this is normally completely covered in a cloud. So you can't see the lake normally. This was like one of the first times ever that you could see the entire lake. And actually standing on the top there, looking around, you could see every side of the island. So it was just insane clarity. And we had a graduate student that had done research on this lake previously. And she was just so captivated by it because she's like, I've never seen it in its entirety. I've only ever seen, like 10, 20-foot radius because of the fog. You're in a cloud, you can't see much. So it's just really cool to see it all at once. You can see on the right there, that's a fisheye lens picture. That's why it looks a little distorted, but I wanted to make sure I got all of it in one. But yeah, so that was my first real field experience. That is when I knew that field work was where I was supposed to be.
Fieldwork can be so fun and super rewarding. We're gonna take some questions because we've had some really good ones. So Katie, Ray W asks, how long did you get to stay on the Galapagos Islands?
So it was, I believe, a 12-day trip, 12 or 14, I think it was 14 days with travel days because it takes a while to get down to Ecuador and then over to the islands. But we traveled 3 or 4 of the islands. So we flew into one, stayed for a while there, did some stuff, moved to another one. We actually had a boat ride all the way to one. It ended up, I think it was about a 4-hour boat ride to our next island, and then took a short plane to the next island, and then we flew out. But that was a really interesting trip. It was a lot of fun.
And Ronan would like to know, what type of camera do you use? Is it a DSLR? Or what type of camera did you use until it it lived its last breath?
Yes, it was a DSLR Canon brand. It was one of their early T models, and I've since upgraded. I think I'm on two newer versions now, but I'm still sticking with Canon DSLR. It is my favorite.
Awesome. Okay, thanks guys for asking your questions in the Q&A. Continue to do so throughout, and we'll get to them as applicable. So Katie, back over to you. Do you have any influential mentors or role models throughout your undergraduate career, and what was the most valuable lesson that they taught you?
Not so in my undergraduate career, like actually in college, it was more everyone around me that I saw just as passionate about things that I cared about that really drove me. So it was just kind of a collective. In my high school years, it was really a couple high school teachers. One of them was in the photo of me in that dive class. He's the one who's in charge of the marine biology field.
Sorry about the technical glitches this morning, everybody. We really apologize about that.
Lost internet for some reason.
Where was I? You were talking about your valuable lessons and your mentors.
Yeah, so I think the most valuable lesson I learned through all of the mentors and peers that I encountered was that you really have to work hard for things that you're passionate about. And I carry that into everything I do, especially here. You have to be very passionate to work in this field. You really have to care about what you're doing. And it was nice to see that around me.
Very cool. That's awesome. Yeah, I know. We've had that reflected a couple of times. It's like really hard work, and you definitely want to be passionate and know that you're invested all the way, because it is a lot.
Yes, yes.
So again, thanks everyone for being patient with us this morning. But Katie, I bet our viewers are curious to know how you transitioned from your degree to working at the Smithsonian. So what type of work did you do after finishing your undergraduate degree?
Yeah, so immediately after my undergraduate degree, I actually worked for a summer camp for the summer and tried to just figure out what my next avenue was going to be. I was applying to a whole bunch. I was getting a lot of non-answers. I'm sure most people, if not all people in this field, can relate to that, or generally just jobs in general. So I took the job at the summer camp, worked through that, and then come the fall, I actually came down here to visit old college friends who were still down here. One of them was actually working at the Smithsonian. I went and had lunch with her, and she offhandedly mentioned that they had an internship available, and I was looking for just any opportunity to get my feet wet in the field and start somewhere. So before I even left the state, I sent them my resume and cover letter, and within a couple months was interviewed and hired and started down here. So I was hired in the Benthic Ecology Lab. So that was the fall of 2014. I did an internship there. You can see some of our lab group there. There's a couple people missing. And some of our creatures that we were sampling are on the right there. Those are photos that were taken by our lab and edited by myself. And you can really see some diversity, actually just in worms, I believe, in that photo. Yeah, just worms. But there's so much in the benthic, which is just the top 2 inches of sand. So there's worms, there's amphipods, which are little crustaceans, there's tiny little bivalves, there's big bivalves, big as in like quarter sized. But yeah, there's a lot of different stuff. So I started in the Benthic Ecology Lab doing an internship where I actually did do a very small research project on porcelain crabs and how they decide where to kind of habit oyster reefs. And we were looking at if they preferred live oyster over dead oyster reefs. I don't think any of our results were significant. But yeah, it was really interesting to actually be able to conduct my own research at that point in time and then actually present on it. I made a poster and presented it at the IRL symposium that's out of Harbor Branch here. So yeah, and then I ended my internship after about 6 or 7 months and went back to work for the summer camp actually because there was no full-time position open in the lab. And I was again unsure about exactly where I was going to go from there. And then actually while I was working at the summer camp, a full-time position opened in that lab, in the Benthic Ecology Lab. So I was lucky enough to be asked back to work for them full-time to finish up a project. So we finished that up. And then that was when I started at the aquarium. So I started at the aquarium in the fall of 2016 and have been here ever since. That's me collecting and shaking out one of our post-larval lobster collectors. It's called a shag. It's just a whole bunch of rope tied to something, and they like to settle in all the frills. It simulates algae. They actually like algae clumps too. We found them in algae clumps before. So, yeah.
And if you follow us on Instagram at Smithsonian SMS, you might have seen a picture of a little baby octopus, and we found that guy in that shag carpet as well, didn't we, Katie?
Yeah, so those shag carpets are a great collecting tool for us because they not only attract lobsters, they attract anything that needs cover. So we found a lot of our grouper in there. We have a black grouper in here right now that we've had for a while that we caught in there, and another little grouper that we haven't really found a species for yet because when they're that tiny, because we caught them about 1 centimeter big, they're very variable in their colors and stress changes change their colors. So we're still trying to get a positive ID on it, but we do know it's a grouper. But when we find shrimp and crabs and just anything that likes to take cover, we'll take cover in those.
And I would just like to add, you know, Katie and us at the aquarium, we have special permits that allow us to collect animals for educational purposes. So I just want to preface with that. But really quickly, we had a question from Ronan about how did you get into photography or how did you learn it?
Yeah, photography was something I started in high school. When I wanted to enroll, it was actually a film photography class. So when it was film, you learned the developing and everything. And then as soon as I enrolled in it for the school year, they actually switched it over to digital because that's when everything was making the big jump over. So that was really my first experience, and I just kind of had a knack for it to the point where my photography teacher actually forced me to join the yearbook staff and continue developing those skills. So she was another person in my early years that was very influential on me. She saw something in me and said, you better go for it. So, and that's carried over through every aspect. Those specimen photos from the Benthic Ecology Lab, I spent time taking a whole bunch of photos like that as well. And now I spend time taking photos in the aquarium. So yeah, it's nice that it's a continual track throughout my career.
Sometimes you just have to buy a camera and figure it out.
Yeah, exactly.
So Stephanie asks us, what's your favorite type of animal to care for? And maybe when we transition through the next part, because I know this question is really hard for you. I know we talk about it all the time at work.
Yes.
But, you know, we love all of the animals and we would die for them, basically.
Yes, it's very, very accurate.
But let's hear your favorite, maybe your favorite at the moment that we have at the exhibits. And you can continue sharing with us how you got to the Smithsonian exhibits and what you do here at the aquarium.
Yeah, so working here is really interesting because we're kind of in charge of everything from the collecting and the taking care of, and then the release after we've had it for our 30-day educational period. Or if we keep it longer than that and grow it up, which we tend to do a lot of the times, it gets donated to another facility that's larger and also uses it for an educational purpose. So having a favorite animal is really hard for me personally, just because I find personalities in all of our animals separately. Some are really shy and some are probably too friendly. And as we grow them up, you kind of see that develop. So, you know, our lobsters are always really fun to have and feed. Our giant hermit crab right now is one of my favorites. We had an orange filefish that I adored, and we grew it up for a very long time, from the seagrass into the hard bottom all the way up to the near shore. And that one was a character because it learned, because we do kind of condition our animals to keep them in our aquariums just to make sure that they are eating enough and they're getting proper nutrition. So if you're up at a tank, the animals usually assume that you're there to feed them. And this filefish would spit water at me if I wasn't up there to feed it. So I would just get hit by a shot of water every once in a while. So yeah, all of them are just so great. Like Laura said, we all do deeply love all of these animals and care for them probably a little too much.
So do you want to share some of your day-to-day tasks with us? I know you have some really great pictures of you. We have a fancy, well, not a fancy hashtag, but we have a hashtag that we like to throw around, which is hashtag which tank is Katie in now?
Yeah.
Because you're in almost all of them.
Yeah. I think the near shore is the only one that I haven't really stuck my actual feet into. But yeah, you know, a day-to-day routine here is kind of set, but also very variable because you are working with live animals and live systems. So you never know when something's going to go wrong, which seems to be a continual theme because of our system, just because of the nature of this job. So a typical day-to-day is there's a lot of feeding, there's a lot of just making sure that all of our systems are running accordingly, checking pumps, checking water flow, making sure lights are on, because lights are very important to our systems, because they provide not only food, but systems for the fish to know that, oh, it's time to wake up, just like out in nature, sunrise, sunset. So I also sometimes, usually at least weekly, have to act as a chemist and test water chemistry to make sure that everybody has enough appropriate, you know, trace elements and other, like chemistry, lots of chemistry. And also as a nutritionist, there's a lot of feedings that have to happen with all of the fish and invertebrates and everything that we have. So we have to make sure that fish eat enough, aren't getting bullied out of food, are getting the proper diet. So that's knowing where they're living in the water column, in the environment, what type of food they would normally eat out in the wild, and kind of our substitute for it. Because we don't have everything obviously out there that they would eat, but we have good substitutes for it. But yeah, as Laura said, you know, there's a lot of, I'm in tanks quite often. But yeah, so this is actually from when our big coral reef tank sprung a leak almost 2.5 years ago. No, it is 2.5 years ago now. So that ended up being a 4-month project of draining it. You can see on the left there, there's still some fish swimming around, but we've taken the majority of the rocks out and things. So this was a very long, tedious project. On the right, the tank is drained, all of the fish are out, all of our rocks are out, and we're about to get ready to fix it. You can see on the left there, there's more like we kept all of our rocks in just giant barrels out in the front of the aquarium. So you can just walk by and see those. And a lot of those rocks are prehistoric rocks, like very, very old rocks. So, and very, very heavy. But it was important to keep all of them alive because all of those rocks have good bacteria growing in them that eat ammonia or other waste produced wastes from fish and other organisms in the aquarium. So I think this was definitely my biggest project to date. Not to say it's not the only tank. I've had to do a lot of maintenance on. The hard bottom last year around this time sprung a leak and we had to do the same thing. We had to drain it all, take the rocks out. Luckily that was a smaller tank, so it only took a few days to fix and redo. But the coral reef tank was quite an accomplishment, honestly. And on the right there is one of those, which tank is Katie, and now that's me in the coral reef tank. We were placing all the rocks and we were doing it on snorkel. So that was a joint effort. Bill and I switched off a couple times to get all that done.
And for those of you who may not know, the coral reef tank that Katie is in these pictures is 2,500 gallons, and it's the first tank you see when you come to the ecosystem exhibit. So if you ever come and visit us, or maybe you have, you'll see the tank right when you walk in the door, and it is our largest tank at the exhibit. Yeah, and from my knowledge of things, the building was pretty much built around the tank. That's how large it was. So they put the tank in first and then finished the walls. So yeah, it's quite a spectacle. It's a really interesting to see a recreated natural environment, because we do try and keep everything to be as natural as possible. So if there's algae growing in there, unless it becomes a problem, it's a food source for something else. So yeah, and in these pictures you can see on the left there, I'm cleaning. We have to obviously take care and avoid animals as much as possible, but it's a very tight space, so you kind of got to get creative with positions sometimes. And on the right, I am documenting some of our species. I think actually a picture that came out of that was a chalk bass with a really grumpy expression on his face. Yeah, and so actually you can see I'm diving here. I'm breathing compressed air, scubaing. And I was lucky enough to go to Panama to get my certification for that last year through the Smithsonian. So I got Smithsonian Dive Certified, which means I'm a rescue diver, nitrox certified diver, and scientific diver, which is the most important there. There's my dive buddy Carmen in the bottom on the right, and then a solo picture of me on one of the reef systems we dove. So that was, again, we had 2 weeks in Panama, 1 week in a pool, and then 1 week at our field station in Bocas del Toro, Panama. So that was quite the experience. It was really interesting. It was cool in Panama, it was really cool to see, because that's kind of what we display in our coral reef tank. We display Caribbean and Florida Keys and that reef track. So as soon as we got down to Panama and got to the water and actually got to see stuff down there, I was like, oh, this is the exact same stuff I have in my tank. I know exactly what that is, and that one, and that one. So it was just really cool to see it all come together that way. Very cool. So we have a couple more questions. So Sharon asks, what's the hardest part of your job? And Denise asks, what's the favorite part of your work day? So maybe you could talk about both those in the same time.
Ooh, it's all, it's a very demanding job. I would say that's probably just the hardest part, is there's a lot going on all at once. And like I said before, it's live systems, so you never really know what's going to happen in a day. Something can go wrong, things can go completely normal, and the completely normal days are when I get a little skeptical, but that just means I'm doing everything right until something goes wrong.
Everything's going so well. What could possibly be wrong?
Yeah, exactly. So many things. But yeah, so, and my favorite part of the job is, I don't want to say all of it, but it really is. It's a combination of all of it. I get to do all of my favorite things. I get to be out in the field collecting and educating people. And then I come in here and I get to take care of things and watch them grow and make sure they're doing well. And I get to document all of that with my photography. And so it really is kind of an all-encompassing job. And the fact that I'm now dive certified and I get to dive in that tank, that's definitely a highlight. It always makes my day better. To start your day out with a dive and a nice mask ring. But yeah, so it's a very challenging job, but it's equally as rewarding.
High risk, high reward.
Yep.
So Katie asks, do the tanks have to be monitored at night, or do you work like a 9-to-5 job? Great question, Katie.
Yeah, that is a great question. I do work a 9-to-5 job. Our systems are pretty stable because we try to stabilize them with simulating the natural environment, make sure everything has food overnight and all of that, and high enough oxygen levels and stuff like that. So we don't necessarily, nobody's working overnight here, but it is being monitored in some sense.
Yeah, a lot of stuff is on timers, right? Like it tracks automatically.
Yep. So yeah, that was a very good question.
Yeah, really good question. I know some aquariums do have an overnight staff, but we don't.
We do not. Nope.
Do you want to talk a little bit more about scuba diving, and then we'll kind of wrap up or get into the 40-minute mark? So we'll answer some questions at the end. Do you have time to stick around maybe a little bit longer to answer some questions?
Yeah, sure. Cool. I'll show a few more pictures I got here. So these are more pictures from Panama. That's us on a boat on the right there. That's our dive group. Taking a little break. You need surface intervals between dives when you do multiple dives a day, which is what we were doing. We were doing up to 4 or 5 dives a day. So you need to take those breaks. And then that picture on the right there is actually the bay that our dock is on down in Bocas del Toro. So all the way on the horizon there is actually mainland Panama. And then it was just perfectly calm that morning. And can't really see down in, but it was great clarity underneath the water, in the water there. So you could just see grass beds and corals and fish and anemones and everything. So that was really cool. Oh, and then this February, I was lucky enough to be able to help out with a research project down in Caribou Key. So that's our field station on the left there with my fins in the picture. And then on the right is my dive buddy, Olivia, and our boat while we were working on one of the reef tracks down there. So I went to help out and collect coral settlement plates for one of the coral settlement studies. So yeah, that was a wonderful experience, and I'm hoping to get back there to help out more. Here you can see the research actually being sort of conducted. So on the left, those plates that she's unscrewing are the settlement plates. There's 2 of them. And after we collected them, we would count the coral settlement live through a microscope, and then they would preserve them and count again to get a more accurate count, because there's a lot of growth on there. You can see there's even a lot of sand, there's a lot of macroalgae, there's a lot of crustaceans, some sponges grow on there too, bryozoans, lots of stuff grows on just very small surface there. And on the right there is me unscrewing one of those tiles. So it was a really, really fun experience, and just solidified that I was for sure supposed to be out in the field doing work, doing that kind of stuff. So And there's a picture of me diving down there. So you can see that was the best clarity water I think I've ever dove in. It was just absolutely amazing. But yeah.
Very cool. Yeah, that visibility is really great. And I think all of us here at Smithsonian are like chomping at the bit to get an opportunity to go to Caribou Key anytime it comes up, it pops up and everyone's like, we want to go too, because it is fun. But I mean, it's a lot of work, but it is still fun and beautiful, beautiful place to conduct field work.
Yeah, the days there were really long with that research project. We were up, 6:30, breakfast by 7, out on the boat by 7:30, 8 at the latest. And then with the processing them live and everything, we'd stay up till 10, 11 at night finishing stuff up. So it was work, but again, high risk, high reward. It was so worth it.
Yeah, you have to cram a lot into the hours of the day just to get it all done.
Oh yes, nonstop pace.
Well, Katie, thank you so much for sharing your career with us and how you got to the Smithsonian and some of the research that you've got to participate in while you've been here. We're going to open it up for a couple more questions. We've had a lot of really great questions today, guys, so thank you so much for submitting them. We might not have time to get to all of them, like I said before, but make sure that if you didn't get a question answered and you really want to know an answer, you're always welcome to email us at smseducation, it's all one, at si.edu, and we'll try and get back to you with the answer. We'll send it along to our panelists. But we have a couple more really good questions. So Layla asks us, what can 8 to 10-year-olds do to practice marine science from home? If you want to answer that, and then I can take over from an education perspective.
Yeah, I would say just start having an interest, start volunteering at beach cleanups even, just something little to just kind of get a feel for it. Visit any educational facility you can find. They'll have a lot of information for you. And there's so many different avenues in this field that even when you get into it, you don't really know where you're going to end up. So yeah, I think Laura would have a much better answer for me than I would on that one.
So just really quickly, Layla, that's a really great question. And 8 to 10 is a super fun age. But I would say if you're lucky enough to live near water, just start getting curious and investigating like the areas around you. If you're not, check out an aquarium or a natural history museum. And again, just start getting curious and asking questions. You're also, please check on our Facebook page. We have a lot of really good activities for all different age groups, especially like the 6 to 8 and 8 to 10 age range. And we have a lot of fun marine science activities that you can try for yourself at home. So definitely check us out there and check out our distance learning modules and get investigating. So really great question. Thank you for asking it, Layla. We have a couple more. Wow, you guys have so many questions. Let's see. How can parents, I guess this kind of goes back to the same thing, but how can parents encourage their kids if they have a passion in marine bio? So you talked a little bit about your mom sort of supporting you. What do you think is like, how can parents like really engage with their kids in this way?
Just make sure that you show them. My mom would always show me stuff. My dad would show me things out in nature, and it piqued my curiosity for more. Like what aren't they showing me? Like there's so much out there that every time you go on a walk and a hike, you can see something new, even if you do the same hike every single time. So it's just really getting out there and showing your kids that there's a lot still to be known about the natural world, and there's a lot to see out there. I think that is what helped me the most. They just encouraged me to spend as much time outside as possible.
Okay, my friends, that is all the time we have for today. Jashir is going to be posting a little bit more about where to email us and where to find those distance learning packets I was talking about. So if you are interested, they'll be posted in the chat. This webinar today has been live streamed to Facebook. So if you came in halfway through or you missed parts of it and you want to check it out, make sure you do look at our Facebook. You can find us Smithsonian Marine Station and Ecosystem Exhibit. And we post a lot of really good content there, lots of really cool links and activities. So check us there. And definitely check out those links. We're going to also be recording this video and posting it on YouTube for after the fact. So I know there was a couple questions about that, and I just wanted to mention it. Katie, thank you so much for your time today, and thank you to everyone joining us. We really appreciate all your awesome questions. Before we go, Katie, was there any like one sort of final advice that you wanted to give to our viewers who are interested in pursuing a career in marine science?
If you really want to do it, just keep working hard and keep at it. Persistence is key in this field. You just got to be really determined and, you know, take any opportunity that you can. I ended up working at the aquarium because when I was hired in the Benthic lab, I expressed an interest in helping out and learning stuff over here. And now 4 years later, I can't get myself to leave. So yeah, just, you really got to be dedicated.
Keep on keeping on.
Yep.
All right, everyone, thanks so much for joining us. If you enjoyed this program and you learned a ton, please join us again next week, same time. We're going to be Thursday at 10 a.m. and we're going to be interviewing Bill Hoffman. He's the manager and head aquarist at the Smithsonian Marine Ecosystem Exhibit, and he's both Katie and my supervisor. So definitely stay tuned to hear more from him. He has a really interesting career journey. He's been with the Smithsonian his whole career, so it's a really unique perspective. You can find the registration links for our live streams on the Facebook page. We do appreciate that you register because that's the way that we can take your questions. But again, these are live streamed to Facebook. So if you can't get a chance to register, you can always catch them after the fact or join us alongside. So we share the links every Monday, so stay tuned for those. Thanks again so much, Katie. I really enjoyed interviewing you, and I'm really glad you got to share your story with everyone. And thanks so much to everyone who joined us.
Yes, thank you all.
Bye, guys.